Imagine visiting a library to check out a book, and you get arrested for it. Then you're coerced by a foreign official into providing a very unnatural service in exchange for your freedom. Next, you have to escape a riot, which may or may not be your fault. Who can say? Only to have someone try to kill you while you're aboard this luxury aeroship. Such is the life of Johannes Cabal in book 2 of his series. It's a whole big thing. I'll try to explain. Sometimes I think of Cabal books as dark fantasy. Sometimes I think they're gothic comedy. Other times I wonder if there's some kind of mystical horror. And yet other times I think it's all of the above and then none of the above. You're reading it and the author throws like this steampunk kind of machinery at you that makes you wonder like, okay, what genre actually is this? I don't really know what it is. But all of these things combined make it fascinating and make it a very good read. At any rate, I was very happy to re-enter the world created by Jonathan L. Howard in book 2 of the series, Johannes Cabal the Detective. I guess I should add murder mystery to the genre list. The main character, of course, is Johannes Cabal. He's our necromancer from the first book with a history of reanimating the dead and making high stakes deals with the devil. And that alone makes him pretty interesting. But to go along with that, this is a brilliant protagonist who's also extremely arrogant, morally nebulous, maybe even bankrupt at times, and at his best, he's socially awkward, and at his worst, he's completely incompetent. All of these traits are on full display in this book, and it makes for a great read. In the aftermath of the first novel, Cabal, who's now re-equipped with his soul, finds himself a prisoner in a castle dungeon, awaiting what he can only presume is a date with the executioner. And in his mind, he's being held captive for the innocuous action of simply trying to check out a library book, the Principia Necromantica. That is very fun to say. Albeit, Cabal is trying to check this book out under rather undefined terms. He also tried to do it in the middle of the night, but I think he would argue that that was just because he didn't want to be an inconvenience to anybody, and he just didn't want to bother or trouble anybody for help checking out this book. While he's a prisoner, Cabal is approached by a government official named Count Marechal, who presents Cabal with a deal to try to secure his freedom. Reanimate a recently deceased emperor of this fictional country called Mirkarvia, also fun to say, just long enough to deliver his final rousing, monumental speech to his people and his troops, which will get them really fired up before they go off to war. If Cabal can do this, he will be let go, and as kind of icing on the cake, he'll be allowed to keep his Necromantica book. Naturally, or somewhat unnaturally, Cabal agrees and gets to work, but being who he is, he decides to kind of alter the plan so that it's more to his own liking. The reanimated emperor doesn't quite live up to the expectations of Count Marechal. There's a bunch of mayhem and confusion that ensues, and in all that sort of ruckus, Johannes Cabal manages to escape, not undetected, but with relatively low friction, so pretty successful plan, if you ask Cabal. But in doing so, he now has a brand new enemy in the form of Count Marechal of Mirkarvia. Somewhat ironically, Cabal's means of escape is actually by Marechal's own design. Assume a false identity, board this airship called the Princess Hortense, and flee to a neighboring country. The book refers to it as an aeroship, but the cover sure looks like a dirigible to me, and that's a much more fun word to say, so I'm going to stick with that. While aboard the Hortense, Cabal encounters a whole new cast of characters, including a familiar character from his past, somebody that he's not exactly thrilled to see again, Leonie Barrow from the first novel of the She Was the 100th Soul Cabal was supposed to deliver to the devil fame. Given their shared history, there's a ton of tension between these two characters. Leonie Barrow obviously hates Cabal for his actions in the first book. She considers him vile, despicable, maybe even evil. And Cabal just escaped from the authorities, and here's somebody who recognizes him and could give him away, could alert the authorities, like, hey, this guy is an escaped convict. He should be wanted. He should be in jail. So the dialogue between these two is tense, it's witty, it's funny at times, it's really good. Oh, and there's a murder or two while aboard the Hortense, hence the detective name. This sparks Cabal's curiosity, a curiosity that he would otherwise be totally fine ignoring, but now that he has this nagging soul back, he can't quite escape this feeling that he's got to look into this. So much so that he has a dream about something that he witnesses subconsciously while aboard the aeroship, and when he wakes up, his curiosity becomes too strong to ignore, and he goes and starts poking around. He's in the crime scene, That doesn't make the murderer too happy. Next thing you know, there's an attempt on Cabal's life and somebody tries to throw him off the aeroship. And this is when the story's gears really get into motion because Cabal is more than just curious about some peculiarities he's noticed on the ship. Now he's extremely motivated to figure out who the killer is because someone tried to kill him. Leonie Barrow accompanies him for most of this, and she proves to be a worthy intellectual ally for him. She provides a nice counterbalance for Cabal's personality, right? Barrow is compassionate, she cares about humans, she cares about the difference between right and wrong. She's kind of the anti-Cabal, except maybe just as smart. So I'm going to stop there because that's essentially the gist of the plot, and I don't want to provide any spoilers. I don't want to ruin it for anybody that might want to pick it up and read it for themselves. There are some character comparisons I think of when I'm reading Cabal. One of them is Sherlock Holmes. He's extremely intelligent, often steps ahead of his adversaries, allowing him to escape precarious situations. He's very shrewd, he's analytical, he's perceptive. Another comp, in my mind anyway, is Indiana Jones. He's well educated, he's well read, he's something of an adventurer. He also likes to apparently wear evening robes, and he's been known to take flight on dirigibles. My third comparison for Cabal would be Captain Jack Sparrow, not because Cabal is a pirate who's going around pillaging and plundering or anything, but because he kind of has a devil-may-care attitude. He has no respect for acceptable social norms and laws or social contracts. He's been known to set people up to take the fall for things that he's done, probably as a distraction so he can kind of, escape. And as we discussed earlier on with the whole library scenario, he's not exactly above thievery. The last character comp I have for him is William Butcher from The Boys. He's very self-amused by his own intelligence and snarkiness. He has very little patience for all things annoying, dumb people, dumb ideas, and all things of that like. And he's very much consumed by a goal. He's driven to get this thing accomplished, and he doesn't really care what it's going to cost. So if any of the 3 to 4 dozen people that watch this video happen to be influential Hollywood types, let's go. What are we waiting for? Let's do this. Karl Urban is Johannes Cabal. In fact, if there is an almighty algorithm and you're listening because of AI, do a little flex. Get this in front of some people. Let's get this going. One notable downside is, like its predecessor, this book is printed on the tiniest typeface possible. It's physically a small book, and from a page count perspective, it's not very long, but that's because the words are so tiny. I would much prefer a book that's 2 or 3 times as big, 500-600 pages long, if the fonts were bigger. It's probably notable to mention that there are fewer supernatural elements in this book. Unlike the Necromancer book, there is no demonic carnival, there's no vampire brother, and certainly isn't a horde of devils and demons that he's making deals with. And also, I think the stakes aren't quite as high, but I think it's okay because I think this gives the author the ability to pen a tighter narrative and better characters. And I think overall, this is a better book as a result. By the way, the afterword in The Detective is very much a supernatural short story. So if that's where your interests lay, be sure to read that. Don't skip out on the afterword. I really enjoyed this book, and I think I've already mentioned I'm pretty sure I enjoyed this one more than The Necromancer, which was incredibly pleasing for me. It's a fascinating main character, great dialogue and interaction with the other characters, a very interesting murder, sort of noir mystery plot. I'm very much looking forward to getting my hands on the third book, Johannes Cabal, The Fear Institute. I just need my local library to get motivated and make that happen for me. If there is a YouTube algorithm listening to all of this, if you can manipulate the hold process in my library, I would very much appreciate that.